Hey friends, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby. Today I'm going to be starting on a reading vlog that I hope is going to be the first episode in what will hopefully be a new series that I'm going to be starting on my channel, a series of videos. And in this series of videos, my goal is to try and read some books that have been sitting on my backlist for quite some time. And what I mean by my backlist is basically books that have been out for like a year or even longer that I've just been meaning to get to that I haven't had the time to get to yet. I was asking in my TBR video for this month, I was asking if anybody had any like ideas for like a catchy kind of title that I could call this series, and you guys came through with some really fun ideas. Like we had the Backlist Bonanza, I had like busting my backlist, you know, reading my most anticipated books on my TBR shelf. I even got throwback attack, and also Ariane came through with another one that is like a Taylor Swift reference. It's been a long time coming, but were these books worth the wait? Ooh! Bogged down by my backlist blitz. I had so many different creative ideas coming through, and I'm still not entirely sure what I would like for this series to be called yet. So if you still have any ideas for what I could call this series, I would love to know any ideas that you have. But I think, you know, going forward in the year 2024, I would like to make this a more regular thing on my channel where I do a vlog every now and then that's going to be reading some backlist books that have been out for a while that I just haven't gotten around to, because I feel like on BookTube, it's become so easy for me to prioritize new releases and to read all of the new things that are coming out that so oftentimes I'll just like let my backlist just grow and grow and grow until I have so many books on my backlist that it's kind of overwhelming. And so I thought this would be a fun way for me to kind of like work my way through books that have been, you know, released for a while now. And I do hope that this is a video series that intrigues you and that you would be interested in watching. For today's video, we're going to be kicking it off with 3 backlist books that I am very excited about. I'm going to be starting with Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and this is one that has been on my TBR for a couple years now. This book first published in the year of 2020, I'm pretty sure. And this is a book that I'm honestly kind of surprised it's taken me this long to read, because there was so much talk about this book when it came out in 2020. It seems like people either really seem to love this book or hate it, and it seems like it's just one of those really weird kind of speculative, confusing books that nobody really fully knows what it's about. And so I feel like it's really either going to be a hit or a miss for me, but I have good feelings for Catherine House. I'm very excited to read this one. And then I'm also finally going to be reading Yerba Buena by LaCour. This is one that just came out in May 2022, so it's only been about a year and a half that this one has been sitting on my shelves. But I'm very excited to finally be getting around to this book, because this is one that I've been wanting to read since it published. I'm pretty sure that this is the only adult book that LaCour has published so far. I'm pretty sure she's only previously published young adult books, and I've read a few of her young adult books actually. But I'm really excited to read something that is in the adult genre from LaCour. I think it's going to be very exciting. And then I'm also finally going to be reading Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby, which this one also was one that published in 2020, I believe. Yeah, so it does look like this one also published in 2020, and this is one that I've also had on my backlist for such a long time, but I've been dying to get to this one because I really loved the book Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, which is a book that I read. I want to say I read that one in 2021, and that ended up being one of my favorite books that I read that year. And then this year I did read the new S.A. Cosby release that he just came out with this summer, but I've still been dying to get my hands on Blacktop Wasteland, and so I'm finally going to be getting around to this one during this video. So yeah, these are the 3 books that I'm going to be reading for this round. I'm so excited. So let me send you back about a week ago when I started Catherine House. Hey, how's it going? I wanted to give a quick update because I have started reading Catherine House, and I wanted to update you because I am now 75 pages in. This is a book that I was a little bit nervous to read just because of the really, you know, like low ratings on Goodreads, and I just wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about it, but I'm really happy to let you know that I'm actually really enjoying this one so far. I think the writing has been very interesting and very engaging, and I'm just kind of already pulled in to the whole like mystery of like what the fuck is going on at Catherine House.
And if you've heard nothing about this book, I kind of went into this book without really knowing too much about it, to be honest, because, you know, this book did come out in 2020. It's been a couple of years since this book came out, and I feel like I haven't heard people talk about this book a ton since 2020. I just know that people refer to this book as being kind of like weird and kind of different, and it has like a college setting, and that's all I really knew going into this one. But what I didn't realize is that in this story, we're following this character named Inez, and she's gonna be going to this Catherine house, which is like a school. It's basically like a college. But the thing that I didn't realize about this book that I think is so interesting is that this Catherine house isn't like a normal college. It's like one of these like weird kind of secret places where you have to be personally selected to even be able to go to this school. So you have to apply, and it's all this like mysterious thing. It's like they only select very few people to even be able to go to Catherine house. But the thing that's cool about Catherine House is that everything is like completely paid for. Like it's completely free to go to Catherine House. Like your education is paid for, your dorm and like living there is paid for, your food, like everything. So you don't have to pay anything to go to Catherine House. But the catch is that they expect you to give at least 3 years of your life to Catherine House. So like when you go to this school, you are completely cut off from the outside world. Like you have no contact with your friends or your family. You were just there at Catherine House, committed to 3 years of your life. And you also like, you can't have your phone, you can't have your clothes. Like they basically give you everything that you need while you're there. And so it's kind of weird, right? You're kind of like, okay, like why would they do that? Like why would you be cut off from the world? And so we kind of follow this character Inez as she's, you know, going to Catherine House for the first time. You get the exploration of like what the house is looking like and how some of the students are. And it's really interesting because it seems like our main character Inez kind of has this mysterious past, you know, and like there's something that has happened to her that we don't really know about at the beginning of this book, because she doesn't really seem to care that much that she's going to be leaving the real world behind, because she's like, after everything that I've gone through, like I need a fresh start, like I don't want them to know about my past anyways, kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting because you're trying to figure out like what exactly happened in this girl's past. But I also just really love, I don't know, the writing so far is just really interesting and really engaging. I've seen so many reviewers say that this book is really boring and that there isn't much of a plot, but I feel like so far, I don't know, I really like the writing style. I think it's really engaging and interesting. I also saw on the back of this book, it also compares this, you know, unsettling isolation to Never Let Me Go, which is a book that I recently just read because that book has been, you know, compared to Black Mirror, and that's one that I just read for the Black Mirror reading vlog that I did. And I really didn't like Never Let Me Go. So with this book comparing it to that one, I was also kind of like, oh shoot, like maybe this is not going to be my thing. I mean, I definitely see the comparison to Never Let Me Go, you know, because we're following a bunch of young people in a school that are cut off from the rest of the world. Like it definitely has a similar premise. But for me, I feel like the writing in Catherine House so far has been a lot more interesting and engaging than Never Let Me Go. And I also think the characters in this book are a little bit more intriguing. So I don't know, so far I've really been enjoying it. I've just been doing some Patreon reading sprints this morning and getting a start on this. I'm also so excited because Starbucks finally has their fall drinks back, and this morning my sister brought me my first pumpkin spice latte of the season. So I've just been sipping on this and having a wonderful time and pretending that it's fall, even though it is still quite a bit smoky outside today in Washington because of all the fires that are going on near us. This weekend it's supposed to get even warmer in Washington, so I'm just like, cool. But anyways, I'm going to jump back into Catherine House, and hopefully I can finish this one up today because it's reading very quickly for me so far and I'm enjoying it a lot, so let's do it. Updated you in a minute because last night me and my sister just made a quick dinner at the apartment, and then I did end up reading a little bit in bed last night before I ended up falling asleep, but I did get all the way up to page 227, so I only have about like 90-ish pages left in this book at this point. I feel like the more that I'm reading this book, the more weird and the more like confusing the story is getting. I don't quite know exactly like what is happening in this book. It honestly kind of reminds me a little bit of Bunny, which I do think I've heard people make that comparison, that like Catherine House is like the same kind of weird as Bunny. At least in the way that we're like following a bunch of students who live on this campus, and then there's also this like weird stuff happening that I can't quite figure out how to explain. I can definitely understand why this book might not work for everyone, because when you really think about it, like this book is really such a slow burn and there's not a whole lot actually happening in the plot. I feel like so much of these scenes are just like some subtle, weird, kind of creepy things going on that are hard to explain, and then it's also just mostly about this girl and just like her day-to-day life living on this campus. And you know, I can see how it might not be that interesting for most readers, but I don't know what it is. There's something about the writing that just keeps me very intrigued. I just really like the way that it's written, and the very like subtle creepy scenes are so creepy and weird to me that it just keeps me interested in like what the fuck is going on in this story, and I need to know. So I do have a few videos. I have 2 videos that I need to film today, but then after I get those done, I'm definitely going to try to finish this one up, especially because I only have about 90 pages left. It shouldn't take me too long. Last night was just really not my night, because I went out to the store like kind of late. Like I left the apartment right when the sun was going down and I went to the store, and then when I came back home I noticed I had a freaking mosquito bite on my neck and it was so red. It's been a while since I've actually been like bit by the mosquitoes, so it was like really annoying to deal with that. And then last night I was such an idiot. Like right before bed I was getting something out of my closet, and then when I went to go like leave the closet, the door, because like I have stuff like right behind the door, so if you push it all the way back, sometimes if you let the door go it like still swings out a little bit, if that makes sense. So when I like pushed the door back and I got back up, the door swung out a little bit and I smacked my head, because I was like coming out this way and I ran right into the door and I hit my head on my closet like so hard right here last night that I was like, oh my god, and it just really hurt last night right before bed. And then this morning when I wake up I feel like I have like a bruise like right here on the front of my head, and I'm like, this is great. So yesterday was just not my day. Like hopefully today I can get my shit together more. Hello, it's a little bit later in the afternoon, but I just finished reading Catherine House, and oh my gosh, right after finishing this book, I was like, wait, because I was like, that's how it ends. Like, it's really one of those endings where it's just like, wait, that's it? Okay, what? And so I wasn't sure how I was feeling about that ending, like, immediately. I feel like when books end in a very ambiguous way, my initial reaction is to get angry, and then after some time and after I think about it, I start to realize like the genius of like ending books on a very ambiguous note. Like that's always how I feel about any book that ends ambiguously. Even though I do love an ambiguous ending, I always eventually do love it. So immediately after finishing this book, I was so wanting to like discuss and hear people talk about it. So I searched up a bunch of different YouTube videos. I did end up watching Kayla's book club discussion because she actually had this as a Literally Dead book club pick back in 2020. So I watched her whole live show discussion, and then I also watched Jess Owens did like a whole rant review on this book, and I really wanted to watch both sides because almost everyone on Kayla's live show really loved this and gave it 5 stars, and then Jess Owens gave it 1 star and like hated it. So I really wanted to see both sides. And I think it's really interesting how, you know, so many people can interpret this book in so many different ways. Because it's like, yeah, is this book kind of boring and plotless? Yes. And is it mostly just an atmospheric, weird read? Yes. It's like, it's weird how people that are rating this book 5 stars and 1 star are saying the same things about it. It's like, we can all agree that this book essentially has no plot and that it's weird and that you don't really know what's going on. But it's like, I kind of loved it. I don't know. I mean, right now I'm kind of sitting at like, I want to give this 4 stars. Like, I don't think it was the perfect 5-star read for me, but I feel like the longer that I sit with like my thoughts on a book like this, I feel like it is one of those ratings that could even get higher over time. Just because, I don't know, I really liked this. And I know that when I try to, it's hard to try to explain myself for why I liked this, because everything that I want to say about it, it's like, it's the same thing that what the negative reviewers are saying about it. Like, yeah, there is no plot, it's weird, it's slow, I don't fully know what's going on. I just think this book has such a strong atmosphere, and it made it so interesting for me to read this story. I did see, though, from people who are reviewing this book poorly, they were saying that Inez was a very, like, boring character to follow, and that she was just kind of annoying to read as a character, but I would honestly disagree. I don't know why I found Inez to be a very particularly interesting character, because of the way that she just didn't care about things as much. Like, I don't know if that's like awful to say, but some parts with this character I found to be really relatable at times. Like, not all of the times, obviously, but I don't know, I thought she was really refreshing to read as a main character. And like, yes, most of this story is just about Inez and her day-to-day life at this school, and just her sleeping around and hanging out with her friends and waking up in a different room. I guess it could be kind of slow and more boring at times for me, which maybe is why it wasn't the perfect 5-star read for me. But most of the writing itself was just really beautiful. Like, I don't know, I was annotating so many different parts where the writing just really like struck a chord with me and just made me care. I feel like this book kind of describes, you know, the feelings of like loneliness and depression, and like even like the fear of aging and getting older, you know, because it's like you dedicate 3 years of your youth to Catherine, and it's like you want to be there forever when you're there, and it's like your college years and it's your good times. There's this one quote where they say, "Now I'm here and I don't want to leave. I don't want to get an ugly job in an ugly office full of shit like staplers and fax machines. I don't want to write memos. I don't want all of us to move far away from each other and grow up and forget to call. I don't want to get fat. I don't want to be tired. I don't know. Sometimes I can't imagine anything good happening to me after Catherine." And like, I'm sure there are so many young people who feel this way, and people who are in college who feel this way. I also really loved this quote from our main character when she says, "I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was afraid of the light, the future." I think when you go to somewhere that's as, you know, unique and interesting and just all consuming the way that Catherine House is, it's really hard for these characters to imagine their lives outside of Catherine House. And this is definitely one of those things where it's kind of like a cult, you know, where like once you get into Catherine House, it really just becomes everything of who you are. And I feel like that could also be some kind of like deeper meaning with like how it is when you go to college. Like, some of these colleges, it really like becomes your whole personality that like you went to that college, or like that you're a student. I think after watching Kayla's live show, I love that there was this one point that Aaron made about how, you know, it's really interesting because this book is written in a very linear format where it's just like year 1, year 2, year 3, and you just get to read about this character's experience with living at Catherine House year by year as she's there. And I love Aaron's point, how she said the first year of this story is the longest part of the book, because that's when our main character is the most like clear-headed and like still an individual, and then years 2 and 3 are a lot shorter because she's like losing a bit of herself as she's becoming more absorbed with like Catherine House and like that whole world. I thought the scenes were like especially creepy, where like they would do these chants. It would be like all of the students, like the director or like the person leading the group would just be like, "You are in the house, we are in the house, we are in the woods." Like, they would do these creepy chants, and like the audiobook was especially cool because of that, because the audiobooks, they'd be like doing the chants and like the teacher would be saying it and then they'd be echoing it. It was just, I don't know, it was creepy, it was well done. I think, yeah, the ending is a little bit frustrating because it's like it doesn't give you any answers. Like, this is definitely one of those books where you have to go in knowing that you're gonna be confused and you're never gonna figure out what the fuck is going on, and that can be frustrating for a lot of readers, which I totally understand. And I know how people can think that this is boring. Like, I get why people don't like this book. I 100% understand. It's just, I don't know why, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I feel like this is going to be one of those books that I'm just going to be sitting here thinking about for a long time after finishing it. And yeah, I don't know, right now it's like sitting at a 4-star for me, but I might even just convince myself to rate this higher. Like, I don't know, it was really interesting. I know that this is actually a debut book from this author, and so I'm so curious to see what she ends up writing next, because I've got my eyes on her. But I'm so glad that I finally gave this book a chance after all these years because, you know, a lot of the negative reviews, it did have me really scared that this might not be my thing. But I also think this is like my particular kind of weird that I really like in books. It definitely reminds me a lot of Bunny. It reminds me so much of Bunny. And then I see a lot of people compare this to Wilder Girls as well, which is a book that I think I DNF'd. Anyways, tonight I am pretty excited because I'm going to be going out to dinner with my mom, even though it's a little bit smoky and like gross outside still. We still have these dinner plans that we want to make it happen. I wanted to take my mom to this like really cute local park that I've just discovered. It's like the same one that I went to in my like Instagram Controls My Life vlog that I did. So hopefully it's not too gross to be outside for a little bit, but we're gonna go to dinner. It should be great. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the following day, and I wanted to update you because I have started on Yerba Buena. This is a book that I'm just about 50 pages into it now. I kind of went into this without really knowing anything about it, and you know, I do have the audiobook from my library, so I was just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna start listening to this on audio. But then I got like immediately very confused because I feel like in the beginning they're introducing you to like so many characters, and there's just a lot of names being thrown at you, and I was like, wait a second, like I need to just figure out what this book is even about first and then restart the audiobook. So I only got a little bit of the way in before I decided to completely restart the audiobook and then read along with it physically because I had no idea what the heck was going on. And so basically this story, we followed 2 different female characters, and so far in the story, the main character has been this girl named Sarah, and she kind of experiences something awful at the beginning of this book. She's basically 16 years old when she decides to run away from home, and that's kind of like what the, you know, premise of this book is talking about. But right at the start of this book, you know, she's a young girl who is with this girl named Annie. Like, they were very close friends, almost like kind of like girlfriends, because they had a little bit of a romantic relationship. And then this young girl, Annie, she ended up like going missing, and then they found her body in the river, and it was just like this really sad thing that Sarah went through. And so after these events happened to her, that's when she decides to leave and go to Los Angeles. And so she's gonna be like running away from home and trying to get away and go to Los Angeles with her friend Grant, who is one of these guys that she's been introduced to. I don't know, there was a lot of male characters especially introduced in Sarah's chapter that I was like, oh my gosh, I was trying to keep it all straight because there was a Spencer, there was a Eugene, there was a Grant, there was a Dave, like there was just so many different male characters that I was like trying to take notes to keep them all straight in my head. But yeah, so mainly the story so far has been mostly from Sarah's point of view as we're, you know, seeing these different events that are going on in her life, and then she's making the decision to leave her small town and go to Los Angeles when she's only 16 years old. And then we just had one brief moment where we were introduced to the other, who I'm assuming is the other lead female character of the book, and her name is Amelie, or is it Emily? And in her point of view, it was so sad because it was just basically this scene where she's like with her sister, and then her sister ends up having an overdose that night, and they have to like call the ambulance, and it doesn't look very good. Like, it looks like her sister might have died that night. But it does seem like the main story is going to be happening between these 2 women, and I'm guessing that they end up meeting in Los Angeles once the character Sarah gets to Los Angeles. And so I'm just at the part now when I'm like 50 pages in where it seems like we're going to be jumping back to Amelie's point of view in Los Angeles, so I think I might get to the scene pretty soon here where they meet. And like, to be honest, I don't really know much about this book. Like, I don't know if this is a romantic story between these 2 different women and they're gonna meet when they're in Los Angeles, or I don't know if it's more just like a beautiful friendship kind of situation. I'm not really sure what to expect, but so far I'm really enjoying it. I know Nina LaCour, this is actually her first ever, you know, adult debut book. I think she's only previously written young adult, and I have read at least one of her young adult books. I might have read even more than that, but I really do like her writing style. I think her writing is just very beautiful. Also, like, how random, I don't know if you can tell, but the text in this is just huge. Like the text is really huge, so it's really easy to get through. I think right now, Rachel and Obed just went to go pick us all up some dinner. I think we're gonna have some yakisoba noodles tonight, which I'm so looking forward to because I love yakisoba. And I think after I eat some dinner, I think I'm just gonna try to read some more of this because I honestly feel like this is a book that I could try to get through all in one day because of how easy it is to read. So I will update you with more thoughts once I have them.
It's raining, sun shining, still storming. Ain't love that feels so foreign, but ain't it coming for me? It's raining, I'm shining, still storming. Ain't love that feels so foreign, but ain't it coming for me? I should have something to lose, huh? Searching the fields, looking for moves, huh? I shed tears and pay hella dues, huh? Saw the options, one much to choose from. I'm on the hill, they say I could fall off. I'm going still, like who should I call on? I got some peers and people I talk to. They offer ears and still it don't solve none. I know the weather probably don't meet your skill.
Okay, hi, I thought I would give an update because I've still been reading Yerba Buena. I'm now about 185 pages into this book. I've just been sitting here in bed reading this book. I actually decided to do some public reading sprints tonight on my YouTube channel, which is pretty rare for me because I don't often do public reading sprints on my YouTube anymore, but also because I'm doing them kind of late at night. I started around like 5:45 at night and it's about 8 o'clock right now and I'm still going. This book has been really interesting so far and I'm having a really great time with it. I'm feeling so connected to both of these characters, both Sarah and Emily. And I think the story is really interesting because for the first like 100 and almost like 150 pages or so, we just kind of go back and forth between these two women's perspectives, Sarah and Emily, and their stories are pretty separate for the most part. Like they both have different things going on in their lives and different kinds of traumas that they're experiencing and going through. And for the first part of the book, I felt a little bit more connected to Sarah's character. Like Emily's character took a little bit longer to like get interesting to me or to grow on me, I guess. Or I guess I should just say like I was more invested, I guess, in Sarah's chapters and like what was happening with her. But now, you know, like 180 pages in, I'm really invested in both of them as characters. I'm just loving this writing so much. Like I've actually tabbed a few different moments that I thought was, you know, like there were some really relatable quotes that I wanted to remember, and then there was just some beautiful, like touching kind of like sad moments that happened that I wanted to remember. I also think the timeline of this book has been a little bit like, not like hard to follow, but just a little bit surprising because the time jumps just keep happening, you know, because at the beginning of this book, these characters were only like 16 years old, and there's just been so many time jumps where it'll be like 2 years passed before this happened, and I'll just be like, oh, so we're just like 2 years into the future now. Like, I don't know, the time is moving very quickly in this book, which is something that I do like. You know, I like, it feels like one of those like literary fiction kind of books where we follow the same character and it spans many years of their lives. I kind of do like that about this, and I don't know, it's been so long since I've read something like this. I feel like it's just so refreshing and kind of like exactly what I need right now. It also kind of reminds me, you know, because back a couple years ago, I feel like there used to be the contemporary readathon, or it used to be called the Contemporary-a-thon or something like that, right? That would happen every September. And I would always look forward to it because I always thought that September was like the perfect time of year to read some of the more like hard-hitting contemporary stuff. And I still feel like that's kind of the case. Like I just think September is the perfect time of year to be reading books like this. So it's kind of perfect timing, I think, that I decided to read this one right now. But anyways, I am still going to be doing some reading sprints tonight. I do think that I want to try and finish this one up tonight just because of how much I'm enjoying it so far. So I think I am going to try to finish it, and I'll update you with thoughts once I'm done. Are you fucking serious? Like, why am I crying? Why? Why am I crying? Just finished it. And I'm crying. Why is this happening? I need to collect my thoughts because I've just finished reading Yerba Buena and I don't know why I just started crying at the end. there was definitely a few moments in those last 100 pages where like it just really brought tears to my eyes and it was starting to make me emotional, and I don't know why. I just feel like I got really emotionally attached to these two characters throughout the duration of this book, and I can't believe that I just read this whole thing within like one night. I just started it this afternoon and I already finished it, and I feel all of the things. Like, I feel like I know these characters. I feel like Nina LaCour's writing in this book is just so beautiful, you know, and both of these characters, to me, they just felt relatable in a lot of ways, and I think maybe that's why I connected to this story so much. I feel like this is one of those stories where it's not really a romance, you know, it's not really a romance story. I wouldn't put this in the romance genre, but there's definitely this like subtle theme of romance between these two girls throughout the book that is just, oh my god, it's so beautiful. It's like that sapphic sadness, like late summer kind of story that I've been craving something like this for so long. And I can't believe it took me so long to read this, because I think this was 5 stars for me. I don't know if this is a book that I would go around like recommending though to everyone, because I can see so many people finding this book to be just okay or just to be not that interesting, especially if you don't connect with these characters. Like, I feel like this is a book that really, it relies on the reader connecting with the characters in order for the story to be really interesting, at least in my opinion, because this is kind of like a slow burn book, and it's not really something that I even know how to talk about because there's not too much of a plot, if I'm being honest. It's just kind of a slice of life kind of story where you're following these two different characters who have been through so much trauma, each as individuals, and they're both dealing with so much as individuals. And then every time that these two characters, you know, whenever their paths do cross, they just share such beautiful moments together, and it's like, it's not really about their romance, but like their romance that they have with each other is like one of the only things that brings them joy in their lives, and it's just so beautiful and like so heartbreaking, and it was just so well written. I feel like this book really does a wonderful job with touching on things that are hard to talk about, like loneliness and grief and depression, and how some people just try to bury those feelings and like they don't ever talk about those feelings. And also, like, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this book, I would say, as well, for like things like death of a parent and things like drug overdose and like situations with drugs, like family members getting hooked into drugs. There's like a lot of that kind of stuff that also happens throughout this book. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't really know how to explain to you why this was 5 stars for me. I think it's mostly just the feeling that I get from the writing in this book and the characters, like both Sarah and Emily as characters. I just felt so much for them during this book, and their story was just really inspiring to me in so many ways. And I don't know, it's just the feeling that I got right now after reading this book. I was like, this is 5 stars. Like, I loved this so much. I just can't believe that this book has been sitting on my shelf for like a year now, and it's just been sitting there waiting for me to read it. This is exactly why I need to be reading more of my backlist books, right? Because you could have a potential 5-star book just sitting there on your shelf for years and you don't even know. But wow, I was not expecting to love this as much as I did, clearly. I don't think this is a book that's going to be like highly loved by everyone, because like I said, this book is very little on the plot. It's very just like slice of life and just kind of like feelings and overcoming grief and overcoming loneliness and dealing with all kinds of things in your life. But there's just something about it that really worked for me. And I know that it's not going to work for everyone, and that's okay, but it fucking... This book just meant a lot to me, so... That's amazing. I can't believe I had a 5-star in this video. Like, I don't know why I was not expecting this to happen. I'm glad that I finished up the reading sprints that I was doing before I read the very end of that, because I wasn't expecting to just like burst into tears at the end of this book. I think if I had to pick one song that would be perfect to describe this book, it would probably be Mess Is Mine by Vance Joy. Like, if you know, you know. I also feel like the song Peace by Taylor Swift would also be very fitting for this book. Like, the song Peace, it's just, I feel like if you know those songs, then like you'll get the vibe of like what I'm going for with this book. But like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna be thinking about these characters all night.
Just
it going? So I wanted to update you because yesterday I have started on Blacktop Wasteland. I was doing some reading sprints with my friend Gavin yesterday, and I was able to get up to 75 pages in just yesterday while I was listening. And this story is a mystery thriller that I've been very interested in reading because I'm such a big fan of S.A. Cosby's book Razorblade Tears. So I've been trying to read more of his backlist to see if anything else can live up to the hype that was Razorblade Tears for me, because I love that book so much. And in this story, it's interesting because we're following this protagonist, and his name is, I think it's pronounced Bogard is how you say it. I think that's how it's saying it on the audiobook, but he also goes by Bug. Like, Bug is his nickname. And so we're following this character who is now a father, and he's a business owner, but he kind of has this mysterious past with being this like getaway driver. He's just kind of known as being like one of the best drivers in his whole area. And the book kind of opens with this really intense scene where he's driving, and it's just, I don't know, the way he writes the action in this book is done very well so far, and there have already been a few scenes that have been kind of very like descriptively gory. I feel like that's something that S.A. Cosby is just kind of known for. I always want to compare his books to like Quentin Tarantino movies just because of the like on-page kind of violence that he writes in his books and how descriptive it is. So the general premise of the story is that this guy Bug, we know a little bit about his past as a driver, but we don't know too much about exactly what happened with him. But now it's getting to a point where he's needing to take care of his sick mother, who is going to require a lot of money, and he's reaching a point where there's so many things that he needs money for in his life that he's reaching a breaking point. And so he might be getting involved back into the world of getaway driving, because he talks with this like former associate who they want to do this like jewelry heist, and they want to go and like rob a jewelry store, and he needs his help to be the driver. So he might be taking on this mission to get involved again in a heist because he needs the money so desperately to help take care of his mother. And I feel like a premise like this is something that really intrigues me, because I think it's really interesting when you have a character who is almost like forced to do something out of necessity to like take care of their family. It almost kind of reminds me of like Breaking Bad, you know, like my favorite show of all time. Because, you know, in that show, Walter White, he only starts like making and selling the drugs because he has cancer, and because it's like literally putting his family in debt because he can't afford all of these medical bills. And so like he gets into it because he wants to take care of his family. And I think that's such an interesting thing to see a character who is just like, they don't have any other options, and so they're forced to do something that they don't really want to do just to try and provide for their family. I do think that's a very interesting kind of trope in thrillers and mysteries and things that I like. So I'm liking it so far. I think, like with all of the other S.A. Cosby books that I've read, I think so far Bug is a really interesting protagonist to read about, and I feel like he's so good at immediately making me care about his protagonist, and the way he writes his characters, like they just feel like such real people. And so I'm having a good time with this so far. I think I'm going to continue listening to that on audio all day today. I'm going to try my hardest to finish listening to Blacktop Wasteland today, because I have so much going on today. I'm actually finishing packing up for my Japan trip, because I'm actually leaving for that tomorrow. I know my videos are going to be a little bit out of order, so I don't know if you'll have already seen the Japan vlog by this point, but I'm leaving for Japan tomorrow. I do have the BookTube live show in about 2 hours this afternoon with Kayla and with friends. We're combining the BookTube and the Literally Dead book club this afternoon into one big live show. It's going to be a great time, but I need to finish up packing, I need to do all of the things, and I need to finish listening to this on audio, so hopefully I can get that all done today, and I will come back at you with some thoughts when I have them.
Like
has been a couple of hours, but I've had a very busy and productive night because I have finished Blacktop Wasteland. I did the booktube live show earlier today. I had dinner with my sister. She made these amazing quesadillas and it was fantastic. And then we also ended up watching the movie Joyride, which was very fun. I thought it was a really funny movie. It's, you know, a comedy movie. It reminds me a lot of like Bridesmaids and like Girls Trip. You know, it has that vibe where like friends are reuniting and taking a trip together, and it was a fun time. I also really loved all of the K-pop and like BTS references. I think it just made the movie even funnier. But yeah, I finished up all the packing that I had to get done today, and I also finished listening to Blacktop Wasteland on audio. And this story, I feel like for me, it's probably gonna be around like a 3 to like a 3.5 stars. I do think this is probably my least favorite that I've read from S.A. Cosby so far, just out of those three, because I really enjoyed All the Sinners Bleed, and then Razorblade Tears is like one of my top favorites of all time. But I feel like for me personally, I think this one lacked a little bit of the emotional connection that I had with his other two books. I feel like I saw so many other reviewers on Goodreads compare this book to like Fast and Furious, but like with a more literary approach instead of like a blockbuster kind of action approach, and I think I would agree with that. I've never been the biggest fan of like Fast and Furious, and to be honest, I don't know, I've never really been a big cars person. Like cars and racing has never really been something that like super intrigues me. But I guess the thing about this book that intrigued me the most is that we're following a character who is being pushed to their limits, you know, financially, and they just need to be able to provide for their family. I do think that that's a storyline that does really intrigue me, but the racing cars story and the violence, especially in this book, wasn't exactly appealing to like my particular taste of like mystery thriller books. I also saw a lot of people saying too that this book reads more like crime fiction instead of like mystery and thrillers, which I do think is probably the case for most of S.A. Cosby's books, if I'm being honest, because I do think a lot of his books range more in that like crime fiction. But I don't know, I still thought this was a really solid read. It was very enjoyable for the most part. I think this book does pack in so much violence. Like, oh my gosh, there are some scenes that were so tough to read. You know, on the Book Troop live show earlier today, I was talking with Deja, who was just talking about how she just finished reading All the Sinners Bleed and how it's her favorite thriller of the year. And she was talking about how S.A. Cosby is kind of comparable to like Karen Slaughter with the level of violence in his thrillers. And I was like, that is so on point. Like, I really think S.A. Cosby is like the male version author of Karen Slaughter, because his books are so brutal at times. And this book, like a lot of other Goodreads reviewers have said, I do think that this book reads kind of like a movie. It just honestly reads like an action crime movie. Like, it's gritty and it's dark and it's brutal and you can just visualize everything so easily. I just don't feel like this was like the perfect book for me because I never got super attached to the characters. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy Bug as a protagonist and I think he's a very well fleshed out and interesting character, but I guess my issue is just that I didn't care as much as I wanted to about what was going on and the situations, you know, whereas like with Razorblade Tears, like I cared so much to the point where it brought me to tears and I was literally crying during that book, whereas this book I feel like just lacks that kind of like emotional punch that I feel like it needed. And so this one just ended up being all right for me. It'll probably be around a 3 to a 3.5 stars. And yeah, it is a bit of a bummer that this was my lowest rated for this whole video, but at the same time, I think this was a very successful video because all three of the books that I just read for this video are books that I really enjoyed. I mean, a 3 or 3.5 rating is still a really good rating. So like the fact that I didn't end up hating any of these three books, I think is a great thing for me. And I'm so glad to kick off this new video series with a bunch of really great reads. I think Catherine House and Yerba Buena were two books that surprised me so much. Like I was not expecting to love both of those the way that I did. So you'll have to let me know if you've read any of the three books that I read in this video. What are your thoughts on them? Please do let me know. Next year, I'm kind of hoping to really make this a new like video series on my channel where I read a few books off of my backlist and we just make it a thing because I think it would be super fun. So please let me know your thoughts on that, and thank you so much for watching. As always, I really do appreciate it, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!